This is Graham, and I'm going to be talking about all the shop tools and machines that you could find working in robotics. So first off, there are non-powered hand tools. These are anything that doesn't require, say, a battery or a cord or some form of fluid power. So screwdrivers, Allen keys, wrenches, hammers, things like that. Only safety advice you could really get on this kind of stuff is to not horseplay with them. Don't play with them as if they're toys, because they're not. You could either end up breaking the tool or hurting someone or yourself. To powered hand tools, there's the hand drill, which is used to drill out holes and in some cases drill rivets. Whenever you don't have it in use, if there's a bit in it, it could be knocked over and it could stab someone. Or if it doesn't have a bit, it could still fall off of a table and crush someone's toes. And having your toes crushed is not a very pleasant feeling. So I recommend that you lay it on its side whenever you are not using it. Whenever you've used the drill bit for a long time, it'll get really, really hot in some cases. So just use common sense to figure out if you've been drilling for too long, maybe, or I don't know, if you think that it's gotten too hot. I would recommend letting it cool off for a little bit before you go to grab it. Whenever you're drilling into something, you want to make sure that it's secure and it won't spin around. So you can either do this by just having your hand like push down as a lever, or you could, and I would recommend, using a clamp. And make sure that you don't drill directly above your like a work table or something, because you could damage the work table, or if the work table is strong enough, it'll damage the bit. The jigsaw is used for cutting wood. I've not really seen it done with metal, and I wouldn't recommend doing it with metal. Whenever you're cutting through something, make sure that you have it clamped down and supported by something, and make sure that you don't cut through that support. So let's say you have a piece of plywood set up on a work table and you want to cut out like a semicircle or whatnot. If you have it so that part of the semicircle is over the work table, then you won't be able to cut that without cutting through your work table, and that'll damage either the work table or the blade, or both. The circular saw is used to cut through wood. I've never seen this used on metal before, so I recommend not using it for metal. There are definitely better ways to cut metal, but again, with this, make sure that you aren't cutting through the table and that you clamp down the material that you're cutting through. The angle grinder is used for grinding down typically metal edges or surfaces to either make them smooth or to give them a nice finish. And there's this little grip right here that I recommend that you use, and you hold it with both hands, one on that and one on the base near the cord. And whenever you use it, there's the potential for creating sparks or for having burrs or other metal particles fly off in the direction it's spinning. So I would recommend that you make sure that you're not positioning yourself or that others aren't going to have sparks in metal flying at them. The pneumatic riveter is used to put in rivets and honestly makes life a lot easier. It's a typical rule for us, it's a rite of passage, I guess you could say, that you have to rivet 100 rivets manually before you get to use the pneumatic riveter. It's like similar to the hand drill, you want to leave it on its side because it could fall over and crush someone's toes. And this is definitely going to be heavier than a drill, or roughly the same weight, if not that. So it's definitely going to hurt. And don't aim it at people because it is not a gun. It may look like one, and it may sometimes be called a pneumatic rivet gun, but it is not a gun, so you shouldn't aim it at people. The Dremel tool is used to grind or cut wood or metal, or sand wood, I guess you could say. Whenever the tool is spinning, don't touch it, because either you're going to be in a world of hurt because you're getting your skin sanded away little by little, or you're going to get a big cut. That'll not be good. So there's that, and then also make sure that you let the tool come to a complete stop before you set the tool down or you replace the tool, because if you're replacing the tool and all of a sudden it starts spinning and your hand is right there on top of the tool, you're not going to have a fun time. The heat gun is, as the name would suggest, a gun used for heating certain substances. Well, we normally use it on heat shrinking or polycord or polybelt. Whenever the gun is on, do not touch the nozzle. It will get hot. Same goes for putting your hand in front of it. Your hand will get hot and burn. And normally, whenever we do use polycord or polybelt, there are some aluminum parts involved to secure everything down. So and aluminum is a very good conductor of heat. It's used in a lot of heat sinks, in fact, in your computer probably. So I definitely would recommend not touching that aluminum with your bare hands, because it's likely going to be very, very hot. So either find a way to not touch that aluminum or use heat-resistant gloves. The hot glue gun is the same idea as the heat gun, except it uses glue to connect things together. And again, don't touch the nozzle or the glue dripping out of the nozzle whenever it's still hot, because you will get burnt. The polycarb bender is used to bend polycarbonate slabs. As you can see here, you can get those nice angles like that. When it comes to using it, don't try to bend it too quickly, because heating and then bending plastic is a slow process, and if you want to have it done right, then you want to do it slow, but not too slow, like a good steady pace, because if you do it too fast, there's the potential it could break, or it will be deformed. And whenever you have it on, don't touch this, because as you can imagine, it takes a lot of heat to heat up plastic to the point where you can freely bend it however you want. Alright, now until the larger power tools. In our shop we have a drill press, which is used to drill holes, and only that. There was once a student who found a washer. It wasn't the right size, so what they did is they put it under the drill bit in a drill press and spun it around so that the hole would become bigger. It's not the way to go about making any kind of hole bigger, so I recommend that you don't do that. Also, clamp down the material before you use it, because it's a drill. It'll make the part spin along with it. Whenever you go to use these, there are different belts up in this little compartment here that control how fast the spindle moves. And there are different speeds that you would want to use for different materials and different sized bits. So make sure that you have it running at the right speed so you don't damage the machine or the bit that you're trying to use. Make sure that you have a good grip on the drill bit, on the chuck, before you use it. Otherwise, you'll damage the drill bit, or it'll make your hole a lot bigger than you'd want it, or the drill bit will go flying. A lot of things could go wrong, so make sure that it's secure in there. And it's going to be a general rule, don't touch spinning objects in the shop. That's all I can really say on that is do not touch spinning objects in the shop. The table saw is used to cut wood. Our specific one will give you a heart attack because it is so loud and sudden. And if you do have a heart attack, make sure that you unplug the saw and fall away from the saw before, you have a heart attack, or before you eventually collapse on the ground and we have to get an AED. And don't get your hand too close to the blade, otherwise you'll get a cut. If you can't hold it with two hands, then you use a push tool. The bandsaw is used to cut wood and metal. Like the drill press, it has different speeds. This one's more binary. It's a faster speed for cutting wood and a slower speed for cutting metal. Whenever you go to lower the guard, make sure that you have an eighth of an inch above whatever you're cutting through, so that you can't accidentally get your finger in through the top or something in through the top. And if you can't hold the part with two hands, use a push tool, just like with the drill press, or not the drill press, the table saw. Miter saw is used for cutting wood or metal at different angles. Make sure that you properly clamp down whatever you're about to cut, and this is just something that I do, but I like to keep the blade in the material I just cut and wait for it to slow down before pulling it back out. That's just something that I like to do. You don't necessarily have to, but I definitely recommend it. The bench grinder is used to grind down metal. It will create sparks, so that's why that they have these two shields right here, so that sparks don't go flying in your face. That and metal. There's also the rests that are there for grinding. Definitely use those, because we don't want, let's say, the drill bit you're trying to sharpen or the plate that you're trying to grind down to just go flying in the air. The belt sander is used to sand down wood, and in some cases we use it to grind down aluminum, or to sand down aluminum. And there's a little stop on the back there that I recommend you use to just give you more control over what you're trying to, sand down. The only instance that I've never done that is probably to get curved edges, and I use that at the end of the wheel. But I still make sure that I have a good grip on whatever I'm holding. And it's not too much, doesn't take too much effort to keep it in place whenever you do it on the side like that, because there's only one point of contact really. But whenever it comes to the flat part of it, don't have a part in the middle, have it pushed up against the stop. Don't touch the belt while it's going, because it's sandpaper, so it'll definitely give you some scrapes. And you'll never need to use the circle. The one that we have, the way that that circle works is, rather than going clockwise and pushing the part down onto this plate right here and making any sense, it instead goes counterclockwise, meaning that you better have that part pushed down hard, otherwise it'll go flying backwards and probably hit a wall. And now that that's all done, time to get into the large machines that we have. This here is Bessie, a TM1P CNC mill. This is exactly what it is, trust me. It's a tool room mill. It's a very small one. It's not what you would see in like big manufacturing workshops, but it's used for fabricating typically rectangular parts and parts that can be held easily in a vise. If we did ever do circular parts, which we have, we would use a series of fixtures to make sure that it can be held in place properly. Whenever you're running any program, whether it just be a simple tool change or the program for what you're about to mill, make sure that you have the doors closed. Otherwise, metal debris or coolant could fly out and hit you in the face. And speaking of coolant, use the coolant whenever you need to, which will be on most metals because metal heats up quicker than, say, wood or some like really durable plastics. So yeah, definitely would recommend you using coolant on metal because that could also heat up the bit and damage it, and we don't want that. The CNC routers, or as we call the routars, are used for fabricating smaller parts than what you would see on the mill. We typically use this for our gussets, or we've sometimes used it for hole patterns on aluminum tubing. And please, for the love of God, zero it properly. Don't eyeball it. We had a problem, and it came down to the holes weren't lining up with what we wanted it to, and so we couldn't get like bolts or anything all the way through something without it being at an angle, and that really messed it up. So yeah, definitely make sure that you zero it properly because it'll definitely help you in the long run, and it'll make sure that things go together properly. And if you ever find yourself in a situation where you can touch the spindle, remember the universal rule for spinning objects in a shop: don't touch spinning objects while in a shop. Odds are they will pull you in, or some loose clothing, or even your hair, and it will pull you in and likely do some damage. Speaking of fast spinning things, Fugly Ferdinand the lathe is used for fabricating cylindrical parts or anything that has a somewhat circular face. Normally we use this for axles. Again, don't touch the spindle while it's spinning at any speed. This can spin really, really fast, a lot faster than a lot of other things in the shop. About maybe even in some cases can be faster than the mill spindle. So yeah, definitely don't touch it while it's spinning at that speed. And another thing to consider is the direction that you're spinning, because certain tools need you to spin it a certain way. So if you need the spindle to be going counterclockwise, then, or for a certain tool, then I would spin it counterclockwise. And make sure that you have the right tool for what you want to do. There are definitely different types of tools. There's the facing tool, cutting tool. There are other types of tools, and you need to either spin them in different directions or you need to use them at different areas. You don't want to use a facing tool to try and cut off a piece of an axle. You want to use a facing tool to make sure you have a flat edge. So don't try and use the facing tool as a cutting tool. There is a designated cutting tool. I recommend you use that. Now, finally, we have the plasma cutter, used normally for sheet metal. One thing that I didn't add here is that you normally want to have it filled up with water so that the plasma can be cooled off quickly and not cut through the table. And this will also emit a lot of light that I recommend that you not look at. So if you are going to use it, make other people in the room aware that you're using it, and make sure that you have proper eye protection. And that's the end of this. I hope you learned something good, and stay safe out there.